First of all, thank you all the office bearers of VHS. You have conceived a magnificent program. I'm most grateful to all the Pujya Swamijis who are not only scholars in their own right, but they are nationally important people. And from them to get blessings has been a great, rare privilege for me. And thank the VHS for having reached them and got their messages recorded. Uh, the my purpose in life is been originally I'd hoped to become a professor, but and also wanted to be a professor in India, but I wasn't allowed. And now Mrs. Swamy was allowed. She also couldn't be a professor, so she had to become a lawyer. I had to become a politician to stay in India. And but then I came to analyze what is wrong with our society. The society seemed to be dominated by one emotion, and that was jealousy. And this is a motivation which is, depleting in your energy. It depletes it makes our country, weakened in its talent usage. And generally speaking, jealousy also creates bad health and a negative mentality. And how did this come about? It came about essentially, it was instilled. Originally, we were the most developed country in the world. The whole world used to come here to buy goods from us and learn from us. The Chinese used to send monks regularly to get Sanskrit texts for Buddhism. Our own sadhu sannyasis went to China to teach. Bodhidharma went from, for instance, from Kanchipuram port, and he went all the way to China and settled down in Shaolin and taught them what was called wushu, the martial arts. And those martial arts were then translated from Chinese to Japanese to be called karate. And now look at our fate today. We are taking great pride in learning karate. And you ask anybody, where did this karate come from? They say it came from Japan. So actually it came from India. And the power of Sanskrit today we are now recognizing because of artificial intelligence. It's perfect phonetic script. It's the noise, the tunes in which these alphabets are pronounced are so precise that the computers find that the easiest to understand. In if you put in English language, then PUT is put and BUT is but, and the computer gets confused. So artificial intelligence cannot make much progress unless the language in which you store language in the computer becomes Sanskrit. And this is a admission by research institutions of NASA, which produces a book called Artificial Intelligence. So I think today we have this generation which came after independence was not allowed to recognize all these past glories. And everything was called as obscurantism, communalism, and people were afraid to praise our own past. On the other hand, all the negative things taught in our history books made us into that we are not one country, we never were one country. They were originally Dravidians, then the Aryans came, then the Muslim Mughals came, then the British came. India is a country just to be looted. India is a country which is to be occupied. We are basically never been able to fight for it. All this is bogus history. But it creates a mindset. It creates a inferiority complex. An inferiority complex creates jealousy. And jealousy means that you don't mind if you don't make progress as long as another person doesn't make progress. So you pull him down to your level. And this is a thing that is today really harming our society. So I am saying that let us develop a new mindset. And I can't start with people who have already been educated, who are working for 15, 20 years in jobs and so on. The younger group, that they have to be told our true history. And of course, if we get a government We changed the history books to reflect the reality. And that also can be only done when we accumulate scholars who can sit down and write the true history. We don't want false history. We don't want to have bogus, claims of or what we never did. We want the truth to come out, and the truth is itself sufficient to produce a new Indian, just as they were in the time of Cholas, who went all the way to Indonesia and to Southeast Asia, and then ultimately our spiritual leaders went to China and so many other places. Today, we have discovered in Iraq a statue of Ramchandraji. So it was all over the world. We were the knowledge givers of the world. We were what is called the Vishwa Guru. And the Vishwa Guru never used its army to subdue anybody. It was ideas, the spread of ideas, and on the basis of ideas we did. So we now have to turn around what we lost for the last 1,000 years. The Mughals completely looted us, depleted us, and then we, of course, in the end defeated them in the final battle near Pune. The Marathas defeated the combined army of the Mughals, and that was the end of the Mughals. Now you never hear of the Mughals. Even their descendants are nowhere to be seen. So, but they can just at that time when we are depleted of our energies of fighting. The British came, and the British then attacked our brain. They said the Macaulay had a thesis that if you want to control India, and with only millions of people, you have to win their mindset. And that's why in my speeches I give the example of how 5 strong lions inside a cage in a circus obeys a thin, wiry ringmaster. The ringmaster will come into the cage, and those 5 lions can tear him to pieces, but they obey him. He says, climb on the bench. They climb on the bench, jump through the ball of fire, a ring of fire that is there. They'll jump through it. Then they said, go and sit in the table. He'll go and sit. I mean, these lions don't know their strength. And at the same time, if your mind is full of fear, then you can have 1,000 goats standing, and one tiger comes, all the goats will start running. Even though 1,000 of them, if they pounced on that tiger and kicked him together, that tiger would be finished. But because their mind is fear, so they run. So this is the Indian problem. We are 1.3 billion people, but our mindset is, can we win? Can we lose? Will we lose? It's better not to do anything than to lose. That kind of negative mindset. And so to change that, we have been working in the last 5 years through VHS, and tremendous progress has come. And you see now our youngsters in IT, they can beat any IT setup. And recently they have demonstrated how they have pulverized the official BJP IT. So I hear just nothing but admiration. And what is this? These are all youngsters whom we have tried to liberate through teaching a correct ideology. And therefore, I have been emphasizing 5 points. Number 1, know your true identity. We are Indians all over, no matter how many people came from abroad, how many invasions took place, whoever ruled us for years and centuries. Today, the DNA tests which have been reported show that we are one people. We have the same DNA. And that is precisely the truth about India. We didn't come from anywhere else. People may come here and there. Today an Italian comes and marries an Indian and so on. But that strain will, after 2-3 generations, disappear. It won't show up in the DNA, because the dominant DNA is the people of India. So we are one people, and we have to now unite this one people. And certainly amongst the Hindus, certain things are crusted. For example, the Varna Vyavastha has crusted. And so these people today, they may be running a factory, still they will say, I'm a Brahmin. That was not the concept of Brahmin. Brahmin was a guna, as repeatedly said in 3 different chapters of Gita by Krishna, that this Varna Vyavastha is based on gunas. And if you are a Jnani and Tyagi, you are a Brahmin. If you are a fighter, you are a Kshatriya. If you are a man who can produce wealth for the country, you are Vaishya. If you can produce grain for the country, you are a Sudra. This is the way it was. And a very small number of people who committed crimes against society were made outcasts, but their children need not be an outcast. So therefore, a son of a scheduled caste or a daughter of a scheduled caste, child of a scheduled caste is not a scheduled caste. But he is free to be anything. And that's how Valmiki became a Maharishi. So, the Vanvasi that Kalidasa was, became the greatest poet of India. Even Vedavyasa, who wrote the Mahabharata, his mother was a fisherwoman. So therefore, we are one people, this concept has to come. This whole Jati system has got nothing to do with Varna. Jati was for marriages, essentially. Because we know that if brothers and sisters marry, they produce children, they will be all demented and retarded, because the genetics works that way. That's how the pharaohs, who in order to save their wealth, they had brothers and sisters marry, and the king was a person who had married his sister. So, and what happened ultimately, they were all born degenerate children, and the civilization of pharaohs disappeared. So, therefore, we had developed a very fine system of gotras and so on, not for anything else but for marriage purposes. But the Varna system, that was devised only for as a division of labor and nothing more. And there was no inferior and superior, except that the man who did the fighting, like the Kshatriya, he didn't have the responsibility to produce knowledge. He didn't have the responsibility to do the teaching. So once you get this kind of mindset, and then you imbibe the Bhagavad Gita concept that I am only entitled to action, but the fruit of that action comes as a complicated calculus of your karmas, including your previous karmas. You can't escape your karmas. You have to discharge it. If you have done good karmas, you will get benefit. If you have done bad karmas, you will suffer. And so very often you find some people they are called lucky. It's not lucky. It's a karma concept. So your job is to go on doing good karmas, and ultimately you will see that some people in their childhood suffer a lot, but in the later life they rise to great heights because they have been doing good karmas, and that turns out. So this way, everything is in your power and God. So these are only two things. And if you think that any result is, you can work for a result, but you must not believe that the result is your right because you worked so hard, therefore you should have got it. That is a concept. Swami Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say, people come and complain why I should suffer for my past karmas in this life. What have I done? How am I responsible? Then he says, listen, young man who came to complain to him, he said to him, you are so wealthy. Did you make all this money? He said, no, my parents made it. So he says, what is your right to inherit your parents' money? All this money belongs to society. Now you don't mind getting your parents' money in the family, inherit it. But when it comes to bad karmas, you don't want to inherit it. So in other words, these are very, very scientific concepts. And this is what made us into great nations. And of course, we must also remember that we never worshipped wealth like in the United States. We worship people who are Jnanis and also Tyagis, who didn't want any wealth for themselves. That's why the most respected members of the society were those who lived very simple lives. Mahatma Gandhi, why did he? He was a very smart man. And what he did is to make the Indians follow him without questioning him. He should wear a langoti and bare-bodied, and then he should live in poverty. And in fact, Sarojini Naidu used to say, we have to spend so much wealth to keep Gandhi in poverty. Because when Gandhi had to travel by third class, then the British had to make sure that nobody else was in that class. So that means a lot of revenue was lost because the passengers were not allowed to travel with them. So this is the man. We want to build a new Indian, and that new Indian must have those cultural values by which India becomes strong. We are much stronger today than we ever were. I'm happy to say now, after reviewing what's happening in Ladakh, that for the first time the Chinese are getting the chill. And the reason they're getting the chill is, even though they started with an advantage and that clandestinely over the last 5, 6 years creeped into various parts of India, our soldiers are ready to fight. And in all battles, small here and there battles taking place, the casualty on the Chinese side has been much more. And today the Chinese have been blocked. They are not able, we have not pushed them back, but we have not allowed them to make progress, and it will be only a matter of time we'll push them. This shows a big difference between what happened in 1962 and now. So that's a change. We have Indians are now topping all top corporations in the United States. The Indians in America have proved what Indians can be in India. And what is the difference? They're the same Indians. They get Indian education, go there, and become so good. How is that possible? I got all my education up to MA in India, and went there and broke every record at Harvard, including taking the general examination in the shortest possible time, writing the PhD in the shortest possible time, and at that time, the first Asian to become a professor in the economics department. So all this happened. Where did it all come from? Because it's the Indians have that genetic structure by which we can absorb knowledge quickly. We have been, over the centuries, this DNA has been from father to son, mother to daughter, or mother to son, and father to daughter. It has been going on. Same thing with gender equality. I mean, you will never find, you won't find another culture where men or women are equal. Of course, men and women can't be equal on physical strength, but then there are other dimensions, and that dimension is intellectual, brains, and even in motivation. And that's why we today have the three most important women goddesses: Saraswati for education, Lakshmi for finance, and Durga for the final battle. After all, why was Kali born? Kali or created? Because all the devtas, including Krishna, including Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, all went to Parvati and said, "Please save us from these asuras. We are unable to defeat them." And she took the the form of Kali and finished them. And same thing you find in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Women ultimately, if they are not respected, then there will be a war. There can be a war. And so all these values have to be given modern interpretation. Gender equality is an ancient Indian thing, but we are not practicing it. But that's because of 1,000 years of slavery, in which not only we lost our property, but we were also lost our self-respect, and we lost our wealth. British alone in 150 years repatriated $71 trillion. What is the present GDP of India? $3 trillion. Imagine $71 trillion. And they were, by current prices. And they were all taken out of India. And how do you expect India to have remained a rich country? So I have this occasion of my birthday, because it coincides with also the formation of the VHS. I thank our office bearers, the general secretaries, the state presidents, the ID cell people. There are so many youngsters who have come into the system, and now we have an all India organization. In fact, we have an international organization, and the whole idea is that we Indians are super people, and we are supermen and super women, and there's nothing we can't do. And we have demonstrated again in ISRO that almost half the scientists in ISRO are women, and they are not westernized women. They are all traditional women. So therefore, I think we must understand that we are today a wholly new set of people, but we have not yet recovered to that status we were before the invasions took place. So the idea of VHS is that we will create a new Indian, and we call it Virat Hindustan. We don't call it Virat Hindu because Hindustan is a land of Hindus and those others who share Hindu values. And so there are a large number of Muslims, Christians. They are all people who culturally were till this poison was introduced during the freedom struggle by Muhammad Ali Jinnah and then carried on by appeasement politics. That these separation was created. They thought that if we can unite the minorities and divide the Hindus on the basis of caste, region, this, that, language, everything, then we can rule this country. And unfortunately, the Hindutva movement has defeated that. And now we are progressively uniting the Hindus to think as one and vote. I don't want the Hindus to vote just because they're Hindus, but those values of Hindus, those parties that propagated, we will support that. That is the way we wanted to build this movement, and that has made a big difference. And today you are able to come to power with full majority, not once but twice, and I'm sure it will be thrice and four times at least till we degenerate again in ourselves. This ideology is now come to stay, and this is the ideology which we have compressed in 5 points for the VHS, and we shall make India as a global power whom nobody would dare to attack. At the same time, we will attack nobody, and we will spread knowledge, ideas. Like today, you find so many foreigners who come to India saying, we want peace of mind. We have made a lot of wealth, but we want peace of mind. So they go to our ashrams. Some of them have been so affected. There was a Hollywood actress called Julia Roberts who had won so many Oscars, but she was an unhappy woman. And she came to India and she learned the art of happiness through Bhagavad Gita and the various Upanishads translated for her. And she was a transformed woman. She went back and she declared herself that now I am converting to Hinduism. My husband is also converting. My children also will convert. And they held a press conference to say that. And therefore, you find now increasingly the ideas of Hindus. The yoga, for example, is now international. Sanskrit will become international very soon. It's better we learn before others learn. And therefore, this whole India being the Vishwa Guru, that is the objective for which we are working. And for that, the mindset is the most important.